2 minutes behind schedule, but I am excited to start this week of Stepdad's Challenge. I'm glad you're here with me. If you are watching live, that's fantastic. Hopefully, those of you that registered got the links, and I need to mute that. Hang on just a second. Okay, the live is going. All right, so if you did register and you got the links, then you are hopefully watching this live on the My Stepdad YouTube channel. Today is day one of a 5-day challenge that we're going to be going over through this week. And this is geared for those of you that have grown up or are growing up and your dad's not in your daily life. I had a conversation with someone today, or traded messages, and there's a lot of different scenarios where if you're growing up and your dad's not in your daily life, he may be in your life and not present. In other words, he may be physically present, but emotionally, he's not there. Or it could be that you've got an abusive dad, which is even worse than my situation growing up, having had an absentee dad. All of these different situations present challenges for you. And that's why I want to do this. I grew up without my dad being in my life. And as a young man, it was particularly challenging in certain ways as I got into adolescence and as a young adult man. To address those, I'm going to share my screen. I wrote a book about some of those challenges, and that's the image there in the screen that hopefully you're looking at. I wonder if I can verify that. Um, but the book's called The Map to Manhood, a guide for young men growing up without a dad. And as I've gotten well into adulthood now, the challenges that I had as a young man without a dad become more apparent the older I got. And in fact, it became a realization that I hadn't dealt with them into my 40s and even into my 50s. And so my hope is for those of you that are participating in this now, and those of you that follow me on social media, that maybe I can shortcut your healing process, if at all possible. The biggest challenges we have because we've grown up without a dad, you, the, part of the reason they're the biggest challenges is because you're blind to them. You don't even realize you have them. And that's what's written about in the book, The Map to Manhood. So what I did in here was mapped out 4 different paths. There's more of a backstory to this. I've told it before, and I don't want to take time to do that now because I want to jump into the challenge for this week. I'm planning on probably about 15, 20 minutes of explanation of what this day one is going to be and give you that challenge. We'll do a little bit of an overview of the coming 5 days today and the next 4 days. And I want to spend most of the time on today's challenge. But just so you are at the same speed as me or we're on the same page, um, there was a man that was my stepdad or my surrogate dad, as it were, growing up. And he helped me learn a lot of the things around the house that I wouldn't possibly otherwise have learned. I did have older siblings, and they did show me a lot of the stuff, and I learned a lot from them in terms of practical things. But that's one of the differences. There's practical challenges and there's emotional challenges. Well, on the Map to Manhood, and you can download this graphic at maptomanhood.org. If you go there, you can download it. There's 4 different paths on the Map to Manhood, and this is what's written about in the book, the Map to Manhood. So you can get that book at Amazon. You can actually get a downloadable copy by getting the toolkit that goes with this, and I'll tell you more about that later. But the the paths that are on here, the first one is self-discipline. And these are the things that I think you're at biggest risk of not getting if you're growing up and your dad's not in your daily life. And they affect your whole adult life if you don't address them. The first one is self-discipline. If you don't learn to discipline yourself, then it's like you don't have a solid foundation on which to live your life. You're at a big disadvantage. The second one is social skills or relationships. And we're going to look at that tomorrow on day 2. The third one on this path, this is the green milestones, is learning to love. My opinion, that's the biggest one. We're going to talk about that on day 3. And it's not just learning how to love, but learning how to love yourself. And again, we'll talk about that more on day 3. And then day 4 is finding and discovering your purpose, these yellow dots that are on here, those yellow milestones. So, what is so hard about growing up without a dad, not having a dad in your life? Here's a picture of me and my family when I was younger. I'm the youngest of the kids there. My mom raised five of us by herself. Their marriage, my parents' marriage, had problems. Dad ended up moving out. He ended up moving a couple of states away. Consequently, I only saw him like once or 1 or 2 weeks a year when we would go stay with him. Otherwise, he wasn't there. Um, so I say the challenges here are twofold. There's the practical challenges like those shown on the left, and there's the emotional challenges like those on the right. Of those, the emotional ones are the biggest ones. And we're going to get into that. But again, we need a foundation to work on those. And this is not easy, but it's doable. And for those of you that miss having a loving dad in your life, I know what it's like, but I want to give you some hope that you can still experience those things, especially you young men, by being the dad that you didn't have. We're going to talk about that on day 5 more, but you can have those experiences. When I was growing up, I didn't wrestle with my dad. He wasn't there. I didn't do that. I didn't play catch with my dad. I don't think I ever did because he wasn't there. I didn't go to sports games. I didn't have the birds and the bees talk with my dad because he wasn't there. But guess what? I've had those opportunities as a dad with my own children, and you can have those opportunities too. But it's not going to be easy, but it's doable. So keep that in mind. Here's a picture. This is Mark Gould. I mentioned him already. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about him, but Mark was my surrogate dad. And the biggest thing that Mark Gould did for me was to give me that love and that direction and that example. He cared about me. I mean, he was a guy in my neighborhood. I could go over to his house on Sundays and watch football, that's which I did. He'd have snacks. Back then, microwave ovens were a new thing. That's how old I am. But he'd take the little crackers and cheese and melt some in his microwave oven. We didn't have one, but he did, and eat snacks and watch football. And he had a foosball table, so I could play foosball there. So Mark was just a good guy. His kids were older than me, so by the time I was there, a couple of them would be there on Sundays watching football too, but they didn't live at home anymore. Mark took me camping. I learned a lot of camping stuff, not only from Mark, because mom did, but things like he'd take motorcycles with him, and he taught me how to ride motorcycles while we were camping. He was a great man. I do this channel, I do this effort to frankly pay his kindness forward. But I realize that not everyone has a Mark Gould in their life. And I also realize that it's less likely today than ever before for a lot of reasons. If you start trying to do something to help young men, then people think you've got ulterior motives. It's actually safer to do this for me and for you online than it would be in person because, well, for those reasons. But the bottom line is, if you haven't downloaded this graphic, the map to manhood, then I want you to download that graphic because that tells you some of the things that if you haven't got those skills, those habits, those disciplines down, then go through this map and do these actions. Get the book. You can get it through the toolbox, which I'll tell you about in the end if you didn't get that when you registered for this. But you can get a downloadable copy of the book with that and a lot of other bonuses for just 20 bucks. If you get it today, it goes up 10 bucks tomorrow, I think. In any event, download this and go over it. So what's in here? There's the 4 paths. I've mentioned these already. This just it shows them a little bit more. And this is the one we're going to talk about today, but the self-discipline path. Historically, and even today, I think dads generally are usually the disciplinarians in the homes. In addition, I know that my mom, raising 5 kids by herself, got worn out. I could get my way with my mom if I really wanted to because she was worn out, if for no other reason. Now, she tried to discipline me, and she did. I mean, she taught us the things we're going to be talking about today, the chores chart, which is what we're going to look at today. Um, if you didn't have a dad in your life who was a loving disciplinarian to teach you some self-discipline, hey, you can't play video games until you get your homework done. And if you skip that, there were consequences. The risk to you is you didn't learn self-discipline. If you did not learn self-discipline and you're going through life trying to find the easiest way forward, you're not gonna do well. You're gonna suffer. So self-discipline is the first path. And there's different actions on here on the map to manhood. Chores is the first one. Taking care of yourself physically is the next one. Health and nutrition, education, and learning how to manage your money. We can't do all of those in this. All right. So we're not going to. There will be an opportunity later that you can get into Stepdad's boot camp. And I'll tell you more about that later this week. And that's where we deep dive into each of these milestones over an 8-week period. But I'll tell you more about that coming up. What I've done for this challenge this week is to pick the one that I think will give you the most benefit if you do it on one of these actions on this bullet, on these milestones. And it's something that you can do in the next 24 hours. So if you're with me, if you're still here, I'm glad. If you're watching the replay, I'm glad. But I want you to commit to do every action that we talk about in this week, in this 5-day challenge. You've got nothing to lose and a lot to gain if you will do that. All right, let's go to the next one. So this is, again, the overview of the map to manhood. The second path is about relationships. It's learning to be a good friend, learning how to be a good friend to other people in different scenarios, not only the friends that are your peers, but other adults, other family members, extended family members, your own family. You've got to like them before you can love them. Hopefully you can be a friend before we'll talk more about love, because that's the next path. And also on this milestone, or on this path, there's the milestone of learning how to relate to the opposite sex. If you are going to have the positive experiences as a dad that you didn't have growing up, guess what? You need to be able to have positive relationships, and particularly one key relationship that hopefully would be your spouse, with whom you would create your own family. That's the fourth milestone on the relationships path. This path, the third one, is the most important one, and I think it's the one you're at most risk for. When I was writing the book, I did research. I talked to other people through my own experiences, talking to some of my siblings. The biggest challenge that you will probably face is questioning your own worth and your own value, because it's hard to understand how your own dad cannot love you unless there's something wrong with you. Now, logically, you can figure that out, but emotionally, it's hard to work through that, but it can be done. And that's why I say this is the most important path. And there's ways you can work into it. The first milestone's pets. I don't have my Felix cam on, but right here next to me is my cat Felix, who is sleeping on the chair in the sunshine because I fed him an hour ago. And so he's content. You can learn to develop your love muscles, your ability to love others, by having pets. Friends, and not just being a good friend, as we talked about in the last path, but learning how to love your friends, loving your family, but ultimately loving yourself is the biggest challenge, but it's also the most rewarding result that you can get. Your ability to love others is going to be limited by your ability to love yourself. And we'll talk more about that on day 3. All right. Day 4 is discovering your purpose. And this is something that dads and moms can help you do. But if you've got a mentor, if you've got someone that is encouraging you to think about a little outside of yourself and what your purpose is or could be, then you've got more of a reason to live. And with more purpose in life, there's more fulfillment. So that's day 4. We'll talk about that on day 4, defining your purpose. It doesn't have to be your life purpose for, when I'm 80 years old, I will have accomplished all this stuff. But what about for the next 3 years, next year, next 5 years? We'll talk about that on day 4. And finally, day 5 is bringing it all together. And this I've been alluding to is, it's really wrapping it up, letting you know that if you want to have those experiences that you didn't have growing up with your dad, that you can have them. And depending on your situation, depending on where you're at, depending on, like in my case, I had a lot of other positive male role models, particularly Mark Gould, but a lot of others too. And so I could see what it was supposed to be like. I just didn't have that in-home example. Consequently, I worried about it. I worried, am I going to be a good husband? I wanted to be married. I wanted to have a family. I wanted kids. I guess I don't know. These days, it seems like more people don't want to have kids. There's no question it's a lot of work, but you're going to have more fulfillment and more happiness and more joy in your own life in a family than you will in any other situation. And so if you want that for you, and it's your choice, as is everything just about, we're going to talk about that on day 5. How you can have the experiences that you didn't have growing up with your own family, if that's something you want to do. Now, if you just happen to be watching the replay, if you just happen to be stumbling across the live stream on YouTube and you didn't register, I would invite you to go register for this challenge. Mostly because that way you get notifications when we're about to go live, when we're going to do this each day for this week. So go to mystepdad.org/challenge and register to get on that list. So with that, I'm going to take a quick peek and just see. I don't know if there's any questions or comments coming in and if I can see them even. It doesn't look like I can in this interface, which is okay. I'm going to go forward. Let's jump into day 1. If you have ever gone hiking or walking on a beach, then you might have experienced something like I did in this one. Let me see if I've got to pull this over on the screen. Um, and I thought I saved this here. Let's see. No, it's in boot camp, graphics and marketing discipline. There we go. Okay. Not long ago, I was on a camping trip. My daughter and I went just last November, in fact, which is why the jackets, to Arches National Park. If you have not been there, you got to do that at least once. We've been down there 2 or 3 times, and but it's a beautiful place with some phenomenal things to see. But while we were there last time, I noticed that on some of the trails that we walked on, let's stick this over here, so hopefully you're seeing that, there was a lot of sand, and we could walk in that sand. It was a lot harder to walk on the sand than it was on the slick rock. And if you were on the rocks, it was a lot easier to walk. Now, I share those with you because those are just 2 little small snippets. That's like not having self-discipline in your life and having self-discipline in your life. If you have not learned to discipline yourself, you're going to be walking on sand your whole life. Everything's going to be harder. Now, that may seem counterintuitive, especially if you're fighting your own inertia. It's nice sitting on the couch, watching TV, playing video games, whatever it is you're doing to kill time or waste time or however you're spending your time. If there's something more important than that that should be done and you're not doing it, then you're lacking self-discipline and your life is going to be more difficult for your entire life. So hopefully you will want to develop self-discipline. And that's one of the areas I think you're at bigger risk of not having without a dad to sometimes give you hopefully a loving kick in the butt when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. All right. What I'd like you to do for the challenge for developing self-discipline is go to this website, mystepdad.org/resources. If you got the toolbox, then these things are all available for you in the toolbox. So you can just click the downloads and get them from there. But this is available for all of you that are watching, so you don't have to have that toolbox to do this. So go to mystepdad.org/resources, and on this page, you can download this bottom middle one first, and then the bottom right one next, because this is the action for this week. I don't know if you've watched the video. There's an admiral who was a Navy SEAL. He gives a talk. It's a graduation talk, and he talks about making your bed. If you want to change the world, start by making your bed. I think there's a link to that one in the toolbox too. But you may think that doing chores, which is what this assignment is, you're going to be making a chores chart. And let me stop sharing for a minute. You're going to be putting together a chores chart for you. When I was growing up, Mom did this for us. So I would come home from school latchkey kids had the key to get in the house. And my habit was usually to go get a snack, sit down in front of the TV and watch the Brady Bunch or Bonanza or Gilligan's Island or all of them, because I think they came on one after the other. I mean, the TV programming was geared for kids getting out of school, right? And that was me. So I'd get some bread or carrot sticks or whatever and sit down and munch and eat. But I knew when I was done with that I had to get up and go look at the chores chart that was in our house. So mom had put together this chart and it had every day of the week across the top and it had our names as rows down the side. And then in each cell, there were certain things we were supposed to do. Do the dishes, sweep the floor, make your bed. That was every day. Clean the cat box, whatever it was. So I would get up and go look at the chart and see, oh, okay, that's me today. I gotta do the dishes. I don't like doing the dishes, but I gotta do it. So I'd go do it. Well, guess what? That's that's your assignment today. So for this one, let me make sure I get the right screen. After you've downloaded this list, I want you to answer these questions. I got this in the wrong order. Let me switch screens here. So the first download you're going to get is this one. When you get this download, this is an example template. So it shows how you can fill it out, but there's two charts to fill out. The first one is just make a list of all the things in your home that need to be done. Make your bed, do the dishes, sweep the floor, vacuum, dust, uh, whatever it is, clean the cat box if you got a cat, walk the dog, water the plants, whatever they are, put them all on a chart like this. Once you've done that, then you take the second download you have and you put them in a chart, just like the one I described to you. And you can get this in the download so that you don't have to come up with it yourself. I think on the website, I've even got an Excel version where you can type in the stuff if you want. And if you don't see that there, email me, info@mystepdad.org or dad@mystepdad.org, and I'll email it to you. But fill that out, okay? So once you get this chart, the first chart, ask yourself this: what are the regular tasks that need to happen for a home to function well? Now, if you're in an apartment by yourself, if you got roommates, it doesn't matter. You still do this. If you've got a shared area and your own private area or a common area in your own private area, and there's other people there, well, that's that last question. Who can or should do them? May not all be you. Now, you can't just assign other people to do stuff without their concurrence, their willingness to do it. But talk to them, and if it's other people, if it's shared, if there's other people in your family, then see what they can do and then schedule it out. Clean the bathroom, clean the toilet, clean the sink, whatever those tasks are, put those on this list. And then once you've got them all summarized, figure out what the frequency should be. That's also on there. How often? Weekly, every other week, once a month, every day, 3 times a week. It depends on what the task is and the environment that you're living in. So hopefully that makes sense. If there's any questions, then put them in the chat. I guess that won't help because I can't see the chat. I'm doing this through Zoom and sending it over, but in any event, if you've got questions about it, then send them to me in an email, dad@mystepdad.org. All right. Why in the world would you want to do this stuff? Well, besides the practical benefits that come from this, there's a lot of emotional benefits. Keeping a clean environment will declutter your mind and your emotions. It will lift your emotions to a higher level. It's the fastest way to fight depression or anxiety, potentially, other than exercising. If you sweat, that's a good way to do it. But you go clean up a closet, you got a cluttered closet, a cluttered desk, a cluttered room. You go clean that up, it's going to feel really good. And you will stand back. And besides, if that physical activity of doing it is going to help you burn off some of the negative emotions that you might have. Now, what I'm talking about here is developing self-discipline. So you're not cleaning as therapy, though there are therapeutic benefits to it. You're cleaning because you're learning self-discipline. And that's the third bullet on here. You're learning to trust yourself. So there's practical benefits, there's emotional benefits, but the biggest one in terms of self-discipline is you're learning to trust yourself. You can trust yourself to do something even though you may not want to do. if you got the toolbox, let me go to the next slide. I put a bunch of links to videos on the YouTube channel, on the Stepdad YouTube channel, where I've talked about this. Learn to love what you don't like. That's kind of the summary for this path of the map to manhood, for the self-discipline path. Learn to love what you don't like. I don't like doing dishes. I don't like doing them today, but I love having a clean kitchen. I don't like doing yard work. Well, it's winter time right now, so it's shoveling snow. We'll say that one. Because guess what we were doing yesterday? We were shoveling snow, a lot of it. But I don't like shoveling snow. But you know what? It's nice to have a clear driveway and a clear sidewalk and a place to walk when there's snow all over the place. That's the benefits of self-discipline. But the biggest one is that you learn to trust yourself and the emotional benefits that come from knowing you can do hard things. So that is today's challenge. In the next 24 hours, I want you to do these things. So don't just watch this out of curiosity. Take this and do it. If you haven't got these, if you didn't get a toolbox, you can get that at that page I showed you before, right here, mystepdad.org/toolbox. There's a lot of other tools in here, a lot of other links, a lot of other references. So please consider getting this for your own benefit if you haven't. You also get a copy of the book, The Map to Manhood. So you get a downloadable version of The Map to Manhood that has all of this stuff in it, and the stories behind it, the worksheets and everything else. The toolbox has a lot of the downloadable worksheets. So I encourage you to get those if you haven't gotten those. That's 20 bucks. That's what the book sells for in hard copy, and you get that and a whole bunch of other benefits and tools that go with that as well. So again, the assignment for this week: download and fill out that household tasks list for you, and then put it into your chores chart, and then start doing it. If you haven't, then you can download those things from the toolbox or from the mystepdad.org/resources. Resources is free. The toolbox is 20 bucks today. All right. I will be staying on the Zoom call for Q&A. For those of you that bought the toolbox, that also includes the Q&A time after, and we're going to do that next. But for now, I want to give you just a preview of tomorrow. So tomorrow's challenge is going to be an exercise that will help you build a foundation for yourself to be a better friend and a more capable person to have solid and deep relationships with other people. And if you don't think that's important in life, you're going to be relating with other people all of your life. If you've got social anxiety, these things are going to help you get over some of that. Can you imagine how fun it is to have an interaction with other people, total strangers, and be confident and comfortable with it, and actually to have it turn out to be a positive thing for both them and for you? That is possible, but you've got to learn the skills to help you do that. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow in developing relationships. With that, if you're in the toolbox, hang on in the Zoom call. We're going to stop the live stream in a minute. But I want all of you to remember that you can still succeed, even if your dad's not in your daily life. I say that in every video, or most every video that I make and I post. And the most important thing is I want you to know that you do have a dad that cares about you. And with that, go download those resources, do this challenge, and get going. I want to hear how it goes for you in the next 24 hours for building your chores chart, and see how many chores you can check off that chart for in the next 24 hours that haven't been done that need to be done. All right. All right. We'll stop the live stream now and see you tomorrow on the live stream. And for those of you in the Zoom call in the toolbox,